Welcome, everybody, to Sober Life Podcast. Thanks for joining us once again. We do always appreciate when you guys are out there watching, and we really appreciate when you leave comments because it lets us know what you think about the show. We always read them back, even if you're watching a rerun of the show. But we always read them, and they're always important to us. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or would you like us to cover a particular topic, let us know in the comments. Also, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and share this with your friends. I'm always bringing you somebody different, and that's kind of cool. And there's so many people, so many friends down here. We all tend to work together and like each other. The people that work at the good places tend to like hang out with each other. Some of the people that are at some of the shadier places, we don't even associate with them. They kind of hide in the corners. But this is one of the good guys. His name is Jim Magner. He's the patient advocate over at Sylvia Brafman. And Jim, how long have we known each other now?
Gosh, I'd say about 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years on and off.
Yeah,
We've been meeting at different places and stuff. And I've always enjoyed your company. And, tell me a little bit about what you're doing over at Sylvia Brafman. We'll talk about you personally in a little bit. But what are you doing over there?
So I'm the patient advocate for the Sylvia Brafman Mental Health Center. I also handle business development. The reason I've entitled the patient advocate is because, the patient experience and the patients themselves are, most near and dear to my heart. Being a former patient in a few treatment centers myself, I want to make sure that when the patients are there, they're getting the right experience. I know patients coming through the doors have a lot of complaints, they're struggling, stuff like that. And I don't like to enable all their behaviors, but when there are things that I can do to make their experience better, I want to make sure that I'm doing it for them. Yeah,
because at the end of the day, they deserve good treatment. Sometimes it feels like there's been this kind of thing. Well, they're just addicts. They should be happy with whatever we give them.
Right.
And that's really a bad attitude, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And, with it comes, the patients who come in the doors, they have this mentality sometimes like they're going to prison. I like to tell patients all the time, go to prison and then come back and tell me what you think of treatment. And it's little things like, they come in the door and, they've never been to treatment before. All of a sudden they may have a roommate that they don't get along with, they're not assigned to a cell, so to speak. And so if they come in the door and they're, 20-year-old kid and they got a 46-year-old guy that's snoring all night and doesn't, they just don't get along. Like I can make a quick adjustment where, based off available beds, stuff like that, kind of move them and get them to feel comfortable, take them aside, grab lunch with them, kind of sit back and explain some of my story with them, what I went through, make that connection with them and help them to just settle down and let them know that the sooner they get through this, if they do it the right way, they have the rest of their lives to do whatever they want. And, generally, it, gets good results.
And what is the overall, what does Sylvia Brafman do? What are they covering there?
So we're a primary mental health center. We're at the PHP level of care. We do offer a dual diagnosis track for those that have struggled with some substances and alcohol, stuff like that. But, on the primary mental health side of things, we're working with schizophrenics, we're working with bipolar, we're working with depression, anxiety, DID, stuff like that. And so they come in the door and have this, they're kind of used to being in hospitals. Where they're in a lockdown facility on the 5th floor, I kind of liken it to they get they're in the nightgowns with the grippy socks, kind of just walking around drooling on themselves.
Yeah.
We're the complete opposite of that. We're a PHP level of care, so we have a lot more opportunities to get them off site. The men live in one house, the women live in another. They get to, experience working on themselves in a home-like atmosphere where on the weekends, we're going to the beach, we're going bowling, we're going to the movies. They get to go grocery shopping for themselves. And so they really get the opportunity to, recover in an atmosphere that feels a lot more comfortable than they're used to in those hospitals that, like I said, it's just, you're in a lockdown building where you basically never see the sunlight. It's not really where in my mind, you get to recover.
Yeah. And that's kind of the old school with mental health treatment.
Right.
Kind of addictions and alcoholism and stuff led the way with opening the treatment paradigm where you have the detox, the res, the PHP, IOP, and so on. But mental health was you go to a mental health hospital and you're getting locked down. And that was pretty much it. Now we're starting to catch up and realize, first of all, a lot of people who are in addiction treatment probably should be in primary mental health first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And insurance companies are recognizing that too.
Mm-hmm.
But then that kind of treatment where you're exposing them to the world and you're doing real world stuff instead of just, as long as you're locked up here, we're going to treat you, and then there's nothing beyond that.
Right.
So the mental health has really come. Maybe is there less of a stigma now, do you think? Is that why it's opening up more? Or
maybe a little bit. I mean, I know, when I got clean, 17 years ago, it was a lot different. You heard mental health and you thought One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and you thought,
which is a great movie, by the way. You got to love the movie.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan. But that's kind of where everyone thought, like, mental health. I mean, it was similar when I was getting clean, as a drug addict who struggled with opiates. It was like, I was looked at as a junkie, when you
right.
But I think that, through time, the stigma's gone down a little bit, and people have been more aware and open to the idea that maybe there is some similarities there, and maybe, we, get them out of the hospital and actually have them start to recover.
Well, with you 17 years ago, even when you were in treatment, even the mention of mental health was very rare, wasn't it?
Right.
I mean, just
rare.
Other than depression and things like that.
Right.
And that's more like, well, get over yourself and get sober and you won't be depressed anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the real recognition of that. So thank God. Sylvia Brafman's been around for how long now?
We're coming up on 3 years in existence. We do have a veteran staff that has been doing this combined for probably over 100 years. Dr. Seeley has been doing this.
Dr. Seeley's been everywhere.
Yeah,
he's fantastic.
I mean, he was, former psychiatrist for the Miami Dolphins. Ben Brafman is our co-founder.
That was probably back when they used to win. No, they're doing better now.
Won a couple games.
They won a few. They won a few.
Ben Brafman has been doing this for over 25 years. And, and that's, really what our team was focused on when we were starting this. We wanted an exceptional veteran team on the clinical and medical side so that we could address some of these mental health needs in that home-like atmosphere.
And again, you got men, women, doing veterans track.
Yeah,
Are there any other specialties that you handle there?
We have the spiritual immersion track, which handles the co-occurring, the dual diagnosis stuff. And so the way it's set up is, throughout the day, if you're someone that's come in that has some depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, but has also abused drugs and alcohol and feel like that could be an issue, we'll address that and have special track for you where you'll get some dual diagnosis 12-step work at night. The typical South Florida treatment, a lot of them just going to get shipped to these 12-step meetings all around the county.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We have it available for those that would like to attend, but it's not forced on them.
It's not everybody's the same. Not everybody needs the same thing.
Right. And there's a lot of these kids that we're seeing that came in and they've been struggling with some substances. But, as we've started to realize that the mental health stuff really was what drove that. And so for those that are just really, truly primary mental health, we're going to address that. For those that really identify as the addicts and alcoholics, they'll have the opportunity to do some different things as well.
Well, I like the fact that you're dealing with the primary mental health because other things may come up while they're in treatment. I mean, you don't know everything when they walk through the door. No. You don't know that addiction, and you don't know that in mental health either, because they've come through, and we only understand a little bit, and a lot of it's based on what the client understands, which could be very little.
Yeah.
So, and then all of a sudden they're in your treatment for a period of time, and you start to realize, wow, this guy's been like chewing pills to get over, to deal with this.
Right.
And what's cool with you guys is you could go through and take care of the mental health. And of course they're being abstinent while they're there and they're doing things. And then they could go on and do other programs to help with their addiction. But the mental health has to be the primary.
Absolutely.
It's not in all, if it's basic depression and things, but we're talking about real mental health issues.
Right.
And not to mention the insurance companies usually will lean towards, if there's mental health, that's what they want treated first, because they do equate some of the addictions with that. So,
right. Yeah. And, and we do a good job working with the insurance companies, also explaining to the families up front our whole philosophy and how we're going to operate throughout this. We're also a very transparent program. We do a very good job of doing a thorough, assessment prior to coming in. Jamie Blaustein, who's the co-founder, and Ben will actually get on a Zoom call with the family and the patient sometimes if they're available prior to coming in, just to kind of go over the program in depth to give them a better understanding of what they're going to be getting themselves into with us. I like to say we like to leave no stone unturned before they come in. We don't want them to have any surprises.
Excellent. What about families too? Because we're seeing more and more in addiction recovery that they need to include the families more than they have before, probably more than they did 17 years ago, for sure. Is the same issue with mental health? Is there an education piece for the family? Are there things for them?
I'm glad you asked that. If we didn't talk
I'm
about
glad I
that,
did too.
Yeah, we actually every Thursday night we have a family program that meets from 5:30 to about 7:30. It's run by Ben Brafman himself.
All right.
It's available both in person and virtually for those families that just it's too far of a drive, a flight, whatever it may be. We actually like to call the family program the virtual wing of Sylvia Brafman. It's kind of a non-starter for us, and we'll go over that prior to them coming in when we're doing those Zoom calls. We want to let the families know that, we're not only going to be treating their loved one, but we want to work on the family systems and anything that may be broken. I love it because personally, when I was going through treatment back in the day, my first 2 treatment centers I went to was day 1, you were an addict, day 30, here's your coin and your certificate. And I'd walk back in the door of my parents' house and it was like, oh, that's right. We've had 3 phone calls in the last 30 days and haven't really fixed anything since I was gone. And so, we do a great job on the family piece to get them involved and educate them and help them to understand what's going on throughout.
Just the education itself is so important because I imagine a lot of families, when you speak to them and you get contact with them a lot of times too, they're like, we just don't know what to do. We tried everything. We locked them in his room. We punished her. We loved her to death. We did this. We did that. And they really, sometimes they just need an answer that they can wrap their heads around, right?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it too, Ben does a great job of educating and explaining, teaching them how to set boundaries. Boundaries is one of those great recovery words that I actually learned and understood when I got sober. But it's great for the families too,
right?
And they get to learn also from the other families are there. We got a family coming in on week 1 or week 2 that is just completely lost, broken, doesn't really understand. They keep hearing people tell them they need to do X, Y, and Z, but don't know how to actually enforce X, Y, and Z. And then they get to hear from the other families that had those same struggles. Coming through the door, but actually started to take the suggestions. And once they took those suggestions, seeing how their loved one has come so much further, it's helped them. And so the other families that are part of our family program really are the ones that give the hope to the new ones coming through the door that, okay, I can buy into this. And if I stick with it, it will work.
How about there's still people out there to say, no, there's no mental health issues in my family. And I say to those people, you have not looked closely enough at your family because we have all been affected. And a lot of times you don't know who it is who is struggling with mental health because not all mental health has somebody running around with a tinfoil hat screaming at city buses.
Yeah.
A lot of them are much more subtle, but very dangerous to the individual.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find a lot of times I'm talking to a family member prior to a kid coming in that, there's always either the mom, the dad, or a sibling that's kind of the rescuer that, is taking on all the problems and enabling the behaviors. Whereas most of the rest of the family is kind of already like cut off the oxygen and is like just standing firm with no, no, no. I recently was dealing with a family like that where the mom just wanted to absorb all these problems and fix. And I had to tell her, like, Mom, until you're able to set those healthy boundaries, your loved one is going to continue to struggle. She finally bought in and we're starting to see some good results. So fingers crossed it stays because, I know that, they can start out strong and then with time they kind of revert back. And so that's why, our family program is set up. Ben has families from, 5-6 years ago that still will attend from time to time. Once you become part of the Sylvia Brafman family, you can, you'll get that Zoom login and come on anytime you want.
Well, that's great because it is a lifetime of learning, even with well-treated mental health issues. There are things that go on as time goes on where they must maybe change their routines for their self-care and things like that.
Right.
Just because it's just like, you drive a car, it gets older, you got to treat it different.
Mm-hmm.
We get older, we got to treat ourselves different.
I know.
And so it's good for everybody to stay connected to a place like Sylvia Brafman where they know they can trust the people and get the answers that they want.
Absolutely.
Or no, not that they want, that they need. That they need.
Good.
If we had the answers we wanted, we'd just figure it out ourselves. We did. All right. So I got to ask you, I mean, that's a great thing. And let me tell everybody there, please, if you want to know more information, go to Sylvia Brafman. It's sylviabrafman.com. It's right there on the screen. You can call them at 844-753-1553. That's 844-753-1553 for Sylvia Brafman. If you just need to call with some questions, right? If you're not sure, it's better to call than not make a call, right?
Yeah, please. You can go to our website as well. And there's a little web form there you can fill out, ask away. We have, people ready to answer calls and questions 24/7.
And it's confidential. You make a phone call, you go on a website, it's confidential. Ask the questions. You don't have to worry about that. In fact, going into a place like that, it is confidential.
100%. Yeah. There's nothing when when you're calling in to chat to us, it's 100% confidential. We're not gonna, your information isn't gonna be, sent out anywhere like that. We take pride in making sure that the people we're talking to understand that, what you're talking about stays here with us.
The only place that information goes is to the insurance company, and the insurance company is bound by HIPAA not to share that with anybody.
Correct.
So you are protected. If they do have issues like courts and things like that, you've got case management as well, right?
Case management will handle all FMLA, anything like that, any outside issues. We like to, talk about that where, you're coming in the door with enough problems. Our case manager is there to make sure that when you complete treatment and leave, that you don't have more problems, even down to even paying your bills. You'll be able to access that while you're with us to make sure that everything's in line. Don't want to lose your job because you finally got help.
Don't sweat your problems. We give them all to the case manager. So they got a couple, they crash and burn, we get another one. We're fine. But no, I'm just kidding. But that's actually a good point, by the way. If there is a mental health issue, a lot of people might not address it because they don't want to lose their job and other things.
Right.
There are possibilities for protecting your job and doing things. There are federal laws in place to protect you, right?
Yeah. So between short-term disability, Family Medical Leave Act, we'll look and investigate what's going to be the right fit for you if you qualify for it. And those are things that you could talk to our trained admission staff up front prior to admitting with us to make sure to kind of get all the ducks in a row before you come in.
It sounds like it takes a lot of the problems out of the equation. All you got to do is ask for help. You guys take over and take care of the people.
We'll take over and do everything that needs to be done. If they need detox, we have some trusted partners in the industry that will work with that as well.
There we go.
So that, we can cover all bases when it comes to it. You just got to pick up the phone, which I know from personal experience can be probably the hardest thing in the world to do.
Now, if somebody's not appropriate for your care, what do you do then? Do you just hang up on them?
No, of course not.
Well, I got to ask.
No, depending on their need, we'll assess and determine what's going to be the next right fit for them prior to potentially coming to us or just somewhere else at all. I vet out, myself and my team vet out a bunch of facilities that can, kind of work with any type of insurance to find them the right, their right need. Because at the end of the day, we aren't always going to be the right fit for everybody. I was telling Karen out there earlier, for me, I only work with programs that I can send my mom to. And so it's not a very big list. It's a big enough list, but I want to make sure that people are getting the right help, not just help.
That's excellent, because I truly believe any program that says they can help everybody can help no one.
Right.
You guys are very specific in what you do. You cover a large area, and you cover a lot of people. But I know also, like I said, we know each other because we are trying to do the right things in the industry.
Right.
And sometimes the right thing is to say, listen, we can't do it, but these guys can, and I vouch for them, and I'll make the call for you, get you over there.
Absolutely.
We'll do it. And that's really important because, you don't know what life you're going to be saving. And it's important. I got to ask though, you grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts. You're not one of the Florida people. You didn't grow up down here.
Technically a Floridian now, 17 years, but
okay. I'm only here about 13. So, but I've been sober 20 years. You've been sober 17 years. Back in Lynn, before you got sober, before everything, I'm sure this was not your dream job and what you planned on doing for the rest of your life. What was young Jimmy? What was he dreaming of being and doing?
So young Jimmy, let's see, back in high school, I was student athlete, did very well in school, excelled in sports, stuff like that. There was never any abuse. There was, my parents have been married 46 years. I'm 46. You can do the math.
So it says they had to get married.
Yeah,
that's what it says.
But I was just, I was a good kid. I went to college. I had some successes there, and then I started to have some failures. At 20 years old, I had kidney stones for the first time, and got introduced to pain pills.
Why? Kidney stones aren't that big a deal.
Yeah, no.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
you know, and I used the kidney stones were kind of the catalyst to kind of making everything really come out to light with all with all my struggles.
See, I actually think it's God's punishment for men not having to give birth. So he gives us kidney stones.
Yeah, well, I've had about 40 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So they introduced you. So you weren't a high school drug user or drinker or big time anyway.
No, I was National Honor Society vice president. I was straight A's, just kind of.
In the grand scheme of things, you were a late starter compared to most of us out there.
Yeah, I was. And it was funny. I dabbled here and there. In high school, I drank a couple beers after a football game, stuff like that, but never anything to get in any kind of trouble. My parents knew, but it was a different world.
Did you have any knowledge of addiction and alcoholism or any of those things? Did you have any knowledge of it?
I'm the only addict in the family.
So it wasn't there.
So it wasn't there. I was a DARE graduate from elementary school way back in the day, but I always kind of knew right from wrong when it came to drugs and alcohol, stuff like that.
But you never really had it in you or around you or affecting you at all. So
there were kids in high school and college that kind of started to do other things, and it was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, and I'm not doing, I'm not going to be
no real impact on you, though.
No, it wasn't going to be anything that I did, and then
so this was nowhere in the realm of possibility that you would end up.
No. Absolutely not. And then
I just wanted to set the stage for that.
Right.
Because now you're getting pain pills.
Yeah. Now I'm getting pain pills. I'm home, and I start to get into a little bit more of the party scene a little bit, but nothing where I'm like doing hardcore drugs or anything like that.
Still trying to do your college work.
I'm still doing college work. I'm still, drinking on the weekends, working, stuff like that. And I found that I could do everything eating a couple Vicodin, a Percocet, and so I could kind of just coast through every day. To here, to there. No, I never seemed high. I was able to function. I was able to drive, and no one ever looked at me like I was drooling on myself. And then when the pain pills kind of weren't there for me, I started to deal with some of the withdrawal symptoms I didn't know existed. And I started to deal with some of those cravings that I had no clue were ever going to be a thing.
Now, that's really an important point here because, again, you don't have a baseline knowledge of anything other than just seeing a few people go off the deep end. You had a doctor who gave you addictive pills. Mm-hmm. He never told you what was going to happen to you when the pills ended.
When I met him, he was an old school doctor. He passed away years ago. He was a great guy, but I met him for the first time when I got diagnosed with the kidney stones, and he was like, "Take these and drink a lot of beer. That will help you pee." I drink a lot of beer. And I looked at my mom and told her to buy me a 30-pack on the way home. And she laughed and didn't, obviously, but it was kind of like, but I came across as that type, like, I don't look like, the prototypical.
There's no bells and whistles.
No red flags, like, and so that's kind of what happened. And, like, it went bad.
That's insane.
It went bad pretty quick, after that.
But we know the story very well working in mental health and addiction, especially that people are being prescribed things without the knowledge of what's going to happen to them when they run out.
Right.
And doctors aren't telling them. Still to this day.
Right.
It's rare that a doctor will titrate a patient or do any of those things. So this thing, like, it got you in.
And it took off at a time where OxyContin was slowly seeping into the world.
Even up in Mass.
Up in Massachusetts is already kind of infiltrated up there. And so when I didn't have the ability to get some of the, my pain pills, all of a sudden I had some friends that, were doing some things and we could get stuff. And again, I'm not thinking I'm an addict at this point. I'm thinking I can stop at any time. In reality, I can't. I ended up checking myself into my first rehab at 22 years old. And it was right in my hometown. It was a hospital. It was like a psych hospital. I was so embarrassed and ashamed and just so many awful things because shortly into, at that point, I'm 2 years into this opiate addiction that no one knew existed.
What precipitated you getting help, though? Did an incident happen?
Yes, a lot of incidents were happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right. So it's a combination.
The combination of things were happening. My family was starting to catch on. I was making good money, but never had any money. Money was starting to get missing in the house. The addict things that, addicts do started showing up. And there were a lot of, I was able to, disguise it for a long time based on a lifetime of it couldn't be me because of who I was and how I presented and everything else. And So it was always like just head scratching, like whatever. And then it just got to a point like I was at my job. I was working at General Electric at the time. And I had a friend who went to rehab and we were best friends. And so he had just, gotten out of rehab shortly before that. He got out and was already using. It started to get to the point where I was like, man, I need to get help. I was too embarrassed and ashamed to go to my family, even though there was nothing they wouldn't do for me. I just didn't even know how to like say help, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I checked myself in and it was, okay, I'm in here to do all the right things. 30 days at the, by the 30th day, the owner at one point had, a girl had asked in one of the classes one day to the owner, it's, there's a statistic that like only 1 in 20 will make it out of rehab and stay clean. If that's the case, there's only one of us that's going to stay clean. Who would it be? And he looked around, I don't know why he did it. It was the dumbest thing ever, but he looked around the room and he's like, if only one of you would, it would be him. He pointed right at me. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head like, yeah, damn right, it's going to be me. Even though I look back after I finally did get clean and stay clean, I told the therapist everything they wanted to hear. Yep, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to go to AA. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to work steps and all this. And in my head, I'm like, these people are idiots. I don't have a problem like they have a problem. I just need to stop doing this pill. And that's where I was at with it.
Right.
I came home, saw my parents, and they're like, are you better now? I'm like, yeah, I'm better. I probably drank within a week, thinking it was no big deal. And on the surface, it wasn't, like I can remember going out and having a couple beers and that was it, and that just gave the disease all it needed, like to preach into my brilliant, smart ass mind. Like, see, you're not an addict. You're not all those things they said. You're not doing drugs. The sky ain't falling. I don't remember the first time I picked up the drugs again after that, but it probably was within 72 hours. You know what I mean? And then it just started all over again and started the cycle of, oh God, now I'm an addict again. Now I'm doing drugs. I can't stop them. I can't go to my family.
A lot of people see this thing, relapse. Yeah. It's people either fresh out. I mean, some people relapse on the flight home, it just, some people a couple of days, whatever it might be, but some people a little bit longer. A lot of times I get questions like this is, what was going through your mind to justify using? Now you said, okay, well, alcohol wasn't my problem, so I could do that. But then you eventually start picking up the drugs too.
Right.
In your mind, did you just discount everything you had learned and said, that's not me anyway, that was all bullshit? Or were you saying I can handle it this time? I mean, I'm just curious.
It's kind of
people want to know.
It's kind of both. You know, like I was young. I was 22 years old, so I'm invincible to the world. I'm oblivious to everything. And I was
22-year-olds don't stop anything.
Exactly.
We don't stop anything.
Like there was also this fear associated with, oh my God, what if I actually say and agree that I'm an addict? How am I going to live life at 22 years old? How am I going to go to a wedding? I'm not a good dancer, but with 6 beers in me, I think I'm a great dancer. So all these crazy things are going through my head. How am I going to meet a girl? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that?
I've often said sometimes the relapse is precipitated not by the fear it won't work, but what if it does?
Right.
And now I got to be a responsible person and do my life without that.
Yeah. And so that was a part of it. And I mean, again, it took me another almost 2 years of just terrible. I put my family through hell. Like there were a lot of different experiences that I'll spare everyone the details on, but I put my family through hell. With everything, just the head scratch and like, how is this happening? I can, countless nights hearing my dad crying to my mom, like, what did I do wrong? I mean, like he took it on himself, and my mom and dad just kind of, meanwhile, both my sisters are kind of just cruising through life. They're both each a year younger than me, just continuing to do the next right thing. Yeah. I'm in my mid-20s. My friends are all, getting married, buying houses, having families. And I'm, figuring out how to scrounge up another $80 to shove it up my nostrils. Couple that with a crippling gambling problem and everything else. And it was just,
why do they always give the gambling problems to people without money? It's just like, can't you give the rich guy the gambling problem and let him go?
Yeah. Well, any money I ever had at that point, I could have been rich and I would have just pissed it all away.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
That's true.
But so, it was just, it was a bad time. I basically tell people when I'm talking to families now, like I gave my 20s away to drugs and alcohol because I was too hard-headed to surrender, ask for help, and actually accept the help. I still had, like I go to a mechanic because something's wrong with my Jeep. I don't tell them what to do. I kind of just say, this is the problem, and they fix it. I go to rehab and ask for help and tell them this is the problem. They tell me what to do. And I'm like, no.
All right. I can do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But
I kind of want to pick and choose. And so I'll fast forward, 28 years old. I had been working at the General Electric now for 8 years. My employee assistance, coordinator named Bob Cummings. He's now retired, but I was on what I call double secret probation, as you know, from Animal House. And I mean, like my record was about that thick,
right?
With all the next thing you do wrong, you're fired. You
kept your EAP guy pretty busy, huh?
Very busy. I mean, he's a great man. I still call him every year on my anniversary to thank him because he didn't have to help me. Because November of 2007, he told me for the last time, if you're a minute late for work, if you leave a minute early, if you breathe the wrong way, I can't save you anymore. And I heard him, but I was still struggling. Like he couldn't figure out how I was still getting high and passing drug tests, which was a whole, they weren't testing for OxyContin back then.
Oh, okay.
I found that out when I got to detox. But so I ended up, I was sick. I had no money. I was like negative $2,000 in my bank. I needed drugs to function. And I didn't have any. And so I didn't show up for work and I knew I was getting fired. And so I kind of just took off. I got as far as Connecticut, running away from home at 28, if you can, which is weird in and of itself. And I was like, it dawned on me, like, where am I going? What am I doing? And so I can remember I called him one last time and I was like, Bob, I know I'm fired. I don't care. I was like, I'm ready to drive my car off a bridge right now because I just don't know how to live anymore. I don't want to use, but I was like, please, if you can help me one last time, I'll make it work. And he said, give me an hour. I'll see what I can do. And I couldn't wait an hour. So at 57 minutes, I couldn't wait another second longer. And I called him and he told me that he was sending me down to Florida for a different type of treatment. He's like, I'm going to give you this chance. You're not going to be fired today. The day you walk out of that treatment center, you will get a termination letter. I said, thank you. And I got to the airport and I got flown down here. And the day I left treatment 5 months later, I did get that termination letter, but I had the foundation and I walked in the door of that treatment center and literally took every suggestion. I can remember telling my therapist, I was like, if you tell me to stand in the corner naked and it'll keep me clean, I'll do it. He's like, you don't have to get naked. You don't have to stand on your head.
In fact, we don't encourage that at all. Not at all.
Just listen. Go to meetings, get a sponsor, start working the steps and actually doing the work. He's like, you're an addict. I don't care what anyone else has ever told you. You're an addict. Once you can accept that and stop worrying about everything else, everything will fall into place. And it has. It was that simple, but because it's a simple program and we're complicated and I can mess up the most simplest of things, it took me, my entire 20s to kind of accept that and kind of be okay with it,
There's a lot of great treatment centers in Florida. There's some that aren't so good.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Do your research. Even with Sylvia Brafman, do your research. People research buying a new car longer than they research where they're going to send their kid to save their life.
Right.
Do the research, call people, talk to people. But there's a lot of great places. But at the end of the day, you're safe. You're in there.
Right.
So what was the key for you when you walked out that door? What was it that kept you sober? What was for you? It's probably different for everybody. There's something different or something to experience.
Right.
Was there something that says, I'm doing it this time?
Yeah, it was the gift of desperation. It was knowing that and believing that I could do it. Anyone can do it. Getting clean, sober is not difficult. You just have to believe it and actually do it and doing the work. For me, it was the pen to paper work. I've been working in treatment for 16 and a half years, and every day someone wanting to leave treatment, the first thing I'll ask them is, where's your notebook? What are you actually doing? A lot of times the people that are struggling while they're in treatment are the ones that are just kind of taking up space and not doing anything. Like I had multiple notebooks filled with stuff that I was writing down. I was really taking that time to do the work. A lot of young kids I find, especially on, when it comes to the true addicts, they're just lazy and entitled. They don't want to do the work and they think they can just bounce from place to place and kind of do nothing and figure it out. Like I did the work.
Well, I think there's also, we got to consider, just because somebody becomes addicted to heroin, it doesn't change them from a human being to an addict.
Right.
They're still a human being.
Absolutely.
And every human being's different. And when you get people coming in off the street who have been in the street for 6 or 7 or 8 years, which we know they're out there.
Yeah.
And they come in and whether they want to or not, they are not capable of putting pen to paper and keeping thought. So it's really up to us in the industry to guide them and teach them and to walk the path in front of them.
Yeah.
It's like you got to come in here, our treatment center. You have to respect everybody. Who teaches them how to do that? Yeah. You need a staff that does it in front of them so they can learn.
Yeah,
and so how important is that to have the staff walk in the way and do it all?
Most of our staff is in recovery themselves. There are plenty that aren't. It's not a requirement, obviously, but
it doesn't have to be a requirement to show people a good way.
But they also, like we're all about that customer service, gentle touch with them. It's not a drill sergeant program where people are coming in, sit up straight, and eyes on me, bucko, or you're out. It's like we come from a place of love and compassion. Most of us have sat where they're sitting right now. That's one of my main responsibilities on a daily basis is I'll sit down with a guy or a girl and kind of try and connect with them, see where they're at, what's going on with them, not my story, not their with them.
Exactly.
And start to just ask questions. What are they looking for out of life? Where have they been? What's worked for them in the past? What hasn't worked for them? Like, let us figure out how to connect with you. Trying to stuff that square peg into the round hole doesn't. We're not going to beat them with a hammer to make it work. I like to say, we'll turn that round hole more into a square that kind of fits everyone into it with time and just, connecting with them, inspiring and giving them hope for what they want to do with their lives.
That's exactly why I asked you, what grabbed you when you got out and kept you on the right path. Because each person is going to be something a little bit different. Right. For some people, it's just developing friendships and saying, wow, I got this group of people, and that's so cool. Or for some people, it is that maybe freedom from that desperation, just a moment where you can breathe and feel like you're not coming apart.
Exactly.
For me, it was my kids, and when I walked out, I said, I owe it to them to be the best dad ever. And then it quickly became, well, to be the best dad, I got to be the best person, so I got to take care of me, and it all. So we all have our different anchors and stuff.
Yep.
But it's important for treatment centers and places to identify that for each person.
Right.
We all can't get sober for the exact same reasons. It doesn't work.
No,
absolutely not. That's, so I really appreciate that you went through. Now you decided almost right away, we're going over. I don't care. This is good stuff. You're not in a hurry, are you?
No.
Okay, good. People sit down, get another cup of coffee. You decided almost right away to go into treatment and help people because you're saying you worked in treatment for 16 and a half years. You've been sober 17.
Right.
So that gave you 6 months to figure out what the hell you wanted to do with your life.
Basically. Yeah.
Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I mean, when I look back through, my younger years, I always loved helping people. I loved coaching. I was a big brother. I was a lot of different things where I was helping people.
Is that like a family thing that you guys are kind of teach each other? You help?
Not necessarily. It was just what I was always good at.
Okay.
When it was time for me to pick college, I was going to business school to become a CEO and envisioned, brokering $1 million deals on the golf course, smoking cigars on Friday. Because why go to college to be broke?
Right.
All things the same. If I could go back, I would have probably been a teacher and a coach and done things because it was aligned with my personality. God kind of, sent me in a direction, I like to say, to, kind of align what, put me where I'm supposed to be. And so shortly after I got out of treatment, there was a new treatment center opening, and the owner knew me personally and gave me a shot. He let me be a third shift overnight tech, which consisted of checking on 6 patients to make sure they were in their beds, and then just, keeping the place clean throughout the night.
That actually is, I consider that the most important role.
Absolutely.
Is that overnight tech. Because amazingly, people don't like AMAing at noon when the clinical director's there. They like to AMA at 2 a.m., don't they?
But
so you could be the only one, right?
And I was younger at 29, and fascinated by it all. And I had I had the opportunity to connect with these guys and girls, but none of them were ever leaving on my shift because I would be out there waiting for them. I had that personality. And so when they were struggling, I'd just sit on the porch with them and kind of develop my style before I ever even had one.
That's beautiful because I think sometimes the most meaningful moments or when somebody sits down and at 2 a.m. play a game of checkers with somebody because they're coming out of their skin, or watch a TV show with them, or do something like that. Those are the brilliant moments, because those are the human moments.
Exactly.
The treatment's good. The faith is good. All that stuff is good. But sometimes it's just that one moment with a person.
Right.
I mean, obviously you feel that, and you do that.
Yeah. But I also knew, because I experienced it myself, because I was working third shift on my job for 3 years, and all of a sudden here I am in rehab, about to lose my job and everything. My whole world's upside down, and they're telling me at 11 o'clock it's lights out, and 7 a.m. I'm supposed to be awake. And it's like, for the last 3 years, my world has been upside down. So it took me a little while to kind of fall asleep. And so I was fortunate enough to be in a program where the people understood that and would just be there with me. And like, I wasn't abusing it, but I could go out there and kind of just shoot, talk with them for a minute, explain where I'm at, and give me that moment of hope that kind of cleared my head to allow me to go back to sleep, and then wake up in the morning. And even though I was tired, like, fight my way through the day. I was taught real early, like, you'll be tired for a couple of days, and then you'll fall asleep, and then your sleep schedule will change, and just, and so I just liken it to being human.
Exactly.
When you're someone that's craving something, and you just need someone to just listen to you and like understand, like I don't think it's some special skill to be human and listen. And
but it requires enough caring to do it.
Yeah,
it's not a skill. Everybody's got it in you. But a lot of people won't take the time to do it because they don't value it enough. You know the value of it because people gave that to you.
When I also came from a family that never gave up on me. When the whole world was telling my parents to kick me out, do this, do that. I know my dad right now would jump in front of a train to give me 5 more minutes of life if it was gonna better our life. And so I took those family values that I always had, incorporated them to my own skill set, and and I try and give back. Like,
what was their reaction when you went in, when it got real bad and you lost the job? You're losing your job. You're going in. Were they scared? Were they angry? Where were they at?
Scared, angry, looking in the mirror, trying to figure out what they did wrong. They had 2 daughters that are also excelling. I was the one that was the golden child and supposed to be able to, do it all. And so there was a lot of, my dad looking at himself. What did he do wrong? My dad's an old school dad. I love him dearly. We have a great relationship. He wanted me to come right back home and, live in his house and, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of everything. I was fortunate enough to have enough insight. Like, no, I have to stay down here. I have to do this for myself. I have to learn how to kind of like cut off that enabling that I know I can take full advantage of, that quickly is going to turn into, everyone kind of turning the other cheek, just whatever, he's okay. And learn to stand up and be a man on my own. And, there was, I can remember going to a wedding with about 13 months sober and sitting there with my dad, and he's got a couple beers in him, and he's like, how are you able to have fun? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm having fun. He's like, yeah, but not as much fun if you were drinking. And I was like, Dad, I love you, but this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I was like, me sitting here having a couple drinks with you right now, the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to open up Pandora's box to everything else. It's just not worth it. I'm okay with identifying as an addict and an alcoholic, and with time, as he started to see that I was okay with it, working steps and kind of making some amends, stuff like that, he became okay with it. It's just, like he just didn't, no parent wants their kid to
Well,
say,
I went through the same thing with my father, because my father and I, we used to sit and have scotch together every once in a while.
Right.
And what he didn't see was when I left his house, it was only a 40-minute drive, but I'd hit 4 bars on the way home.
Right.
And he didn't see that part.
No.
And he once in a while saw me at my worst, but most of the time he didn't, because I didn't allow him to see that. And we were separated. So he's like, he couldn't understand. He's like, well, so we can't sit and have a scotch and a cigar anymore together. Right. I'm like, well, I'll have the cigar with you.
Yeah, and just a club soda.
But but it just doesn't. I told him I drink alcohol-free scotch now. It's called water. Yes. It's water. You take the alcohol out, all you got is water. So but after time, he started to trust me and believe in me.
Yeah.
We were even at a wedding one time, and he was with the group getting drunk over there, and I was sitting at the table with sober people, and he had to use the restroom. He went and he put his scotch right in front of me, and he says, I'm putting it here because I know it's the safest place in this building.
Yes.
And for some reason, I felt really honored by that. It's
Yeah.
like, you know who I am now.
Right.
You know I'm not the one who's ever going to drink that.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
that was a beautiful
That
moment.
is a beautiful thing.
I have to ask you before we end, because Jim, you're fantastic. I love your story. I love what you do. You're married, 2 kids.
Yes.
Your wife, is she somebody in recovery, or is she somebody?
She's not.
So how? I guess a lot of people wonder about that. Is building a relationship. But when did you meet her? How long were you sober?
So I was when I originally met her, I was only about 2 years sober, and then I was a serial dater in the rooms for a long time, in and out of the rooms, I should say.
Captain Crunch, Rice Krispies. He did a lot of cereal.
Like I put down the drugs, and I started to do other things. I worked a lot of steps and did a lot of work on myself. But me and my wife reconnected back in, and I'm sorry if I'm saying the year wrong, babe. It was either 2013 or 2014. I know we've been married almost 8 years, coming up in July.
Jim, write that shit down. It's going to get you in a lot of trouble one day.
The years kind of all just melt together. But so my wife she's born and raised down here. She ended up moving up. She was at Penn State up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And every year for Thanksgiving, I fly home, see my family, and they're always, "Oh, you ever going to bring a girl home? You ever going to, And I'm like, I'm dating. So after dinner, I'm sitting on the couch watching football with my dad, and I go on Instagram, and my wife had posted, she wasn't even my girlfriend then, this fantastic spread she had made for her and her friends, Thanksgiving dinner and all that. And I can remember thinking, like, man, this girl was always perfect in every way. If only I could just get out of my own way and kind of be ready to settle down. And so I messaged her one more time, for the millionth time, I should say. And she replied. And so we started just talking and texting, because we were thousands of miles away. And so for the first time in the years we've known each other, all we could be was friends. And we built this great relationship for the first time, where there was nothing physical about it. And it was just getting to know each other. That spring, she ended up making the decision to fly back down to Florida, to move back down to Florida to finish school online. I flew up there at the end of May. We made the drive down together. It was my favorite road trip I've ever taken. And we've been together ever since.
You didn't stop at south of the border, did you?
We did.
You did?
Of course we did.
I've never stopped there. It looks like a Quentin Tarantino movie ready to happen, right?
Yeah, I still have this cool Walmart shirt from 4th of July that I wear every year on 4th of July. She rolls her eyes. But we've been together ever since.
That's fantastic.
Got married and had our first son in 2016. 2 years later, our daughter Kennedy graced us with her presence. But
now you're sober for a period of time, and like you said, you dated, and which is actually, I encourage people to do that.
Right.
Date. Go on a couple of dates. Don't fall in love with the first person who says hi to you.
Right.
Go on dates, not necessarily serial dating.
Right.
Go out and learn how to enjoy people's company, and go out and learn how to be friends and do that stuff. And then the real relationships will follow as it did with you.
The funny thing is, like, you talk about like her not being in recovery versus me being in recovery. We knew each other long enough at that point and had plenty of conversations about it that it was never really going to be an issue.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask is, do you share all that with her? Everything. Are you an open book with your kids as well, or will you be? Depends on how old they are.
Yeah, they're 8. They're going to be 8 and 6. So when they get older, I'll share with them. Just
right now, it's just Daddy doesn't drink.
Right, and as they get older, they're going to dabble and probably do stuff, and I'll be there with a watchful eye to kind of reel them in. But we'll have those. I'm not ready for those conversations.
Well, no, not yet.
Yeah, but with my wife, I learned early on. I mean, my family, my dad would always, be my open book in public if needed be, before I got clean. And then, I learned from my sponsor, and there's nothing I've done so bad that other people haven't done. So I've always felt like the more honest I can be about my recovery, the easier it is to not have to worry about, there are certain details that I'm not going to share with certain people. But
certainly. But
but my wife knows it all.
Overall, I was a little bit of a thief. I was a little bit I did this, I did that. The thing is, those secrets are the ones that'll keep dragging you backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
So in all the darkness in our past, it shrinks in the light of day. So bring it out.
It's my favorite.
Bring it out. I think it's fantastic, and I wish you and your wife and your kids, all the luck in the world. And you don't need luck when you have faith and you're moving forward and you're doing the next right thing and helping people.
Right.
And we appreciate that too. Once again, I want to remind everybody, check out Sylvia Brafman if you want to meet more people like Jim Magner here. 844-753-1553 is the number to call. You can go to sylviabrafman.com. Check out their website. It's very very detailed on the website. Shows a lot of good stuff on there. And I guess I want to end, and I appreciate you taking your time to be on the show. It's been fantastic, and
had a great time.
Hopefully we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Great. So it wasn't too torturous. I want to say though, somebody out there right now is watching.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody out there is watching whose son or daughter, or maybe themselves,
right,
are struggling with either mental health or addiction problems. What do you want to? And they're like. The word frozen comes to mind.
Right.
It's like, it's not even a fear. It's just like, I can't move forward. I can't go backwards. What do you want to tell them?
Reach out. There is help. I lived it. I went through it. I can remember sitting upstairs every night, wanting my family to come intervene, and then hearing a footstep and praying they're not coming up. Reach out. It's completely confidential. We have a web chat. You can call us directly. You can talk. You can call me if you want. You can ask for my number. I'm happy to talk to you and help you out. There is help out there for everyone. And I can promise you, if you give yourself a chance, you can get this too, because it worked for me.
Well, that's it. Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you.
Good man. And I encourage you to find out more information about Sylvia Brafman, find out more about Jim. But more importantly, keep an eye on your loved ones. Take care of yourself. If you know somebody's got a problem, if there's a serious mental health problem and you're afraid for somebody's life, make sure you call 988, which is the mental health hotline, and that's for emergencies. But don't wait. If somebody needs help, call Sylvia Brafman. Call somebody. It's not like the old days where we can sit and wait on things.
Right.
The drugs out there and the things that people are doing, and it's just not safe anymore. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Once again, Jim Magner, I'm Scott Jones, your host. We'll catch you next time right here on the Sober Life Podcast. Bye-bye now.
Take care.